Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to my German Grand Prix review. Now, it was a race of surprises, drama, controversy, and even the rain arrived to spice things up. But before we get on to any of that, let's start by having a look at our race winner. It was Lewis Hamilton who took victory at Hockenheim despite starting from 14th on the grid. His journey through the midfield, as we saw at Silverstone, wasn't made particularly difficult, but he took full advantage of his car's superior speed, some good fortune, and of course Sebastian Vettel's mistake to take his fourth win of the season. He did also dodge a time penalty after the race, but we will get into that once we've finished looking at the result. Hamilton described the win as the drive of his life, and that has seen the Brit move to the top of the Drivers' Championship. If you like your stats, an interesting one here from Autosport. And that win from Hamilton was only the 12th time in 976 World Championship races, that's excluding the Indy 500 races, that a driver has won from 14th or lower on the grid. As I said there, I will be talking about Lewis Hamilton and Nat Stewart's investigation shortly, but before that, let's have a look at the full race result. Valtteri Bottas completed a Mercedes 1-2, finishing 4.5 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton. Kimi Raikkonen rounded off the podium for Ferrari, but in the end, a very disappointing end to the weekend for the Scuderia. Max Verstappen finished in a very strong 4th place for Red Bull. Nico Hülkenberg finished a season-best 5th for Renault at his home Grand Prix, and that was just ahead of Romain Grosjean in his Haas. Sergio Perez had a very solid race to come home in 7th place, and Esteban Ocon also recovered well to 8th, but I'll be talking about him a little bit later on. Marcus Ericsson took 9th place for Sauber, a couple more points for him. And Brendan Hartley doubled his points tally for the season with a 10th place finish for Toro Rosso. Kevin Magnussen ended the day in 11th place. I think he'll be disappointed with that. Strategy didn't quite work out, and neither did the rain for him in the end. Carlos Sainz did finish 10th but received a 10-second time penalty for overtaking under the safety car and so was relegated to 12th. Stoffel Van Dorn struggled throughout the weekend and ended up finishing in 13th place ahead of Pierre Gasly, who, interestingly enough, took the gamble to move to the wet tyre when the rain began to fall. That surprised a lot of people and did not work out. And also a gamble on strategy in the rain didn't work for Charles Leclerc, who ended up 15th and had a big spin through turn 1 late on in the race, but a really good save from him. And your retirements list for the German Grand Prix, Fernando Alonso was classified 16th, but he didn't actually finish the race. He retired late on with a gearbox problem. Lance Stroll was forced into retirement with a brake issue. Sebastian Vettel, we're going to talk about him a little bit later on. He crashed out of the lead. Sergei Sorokin had an engine oil leak. And Daniel Ricciardo retired for Red Bull with yet more engine problems. There is, though, only one place to start, and that is with that post-race controversy. It all started under the safety car when Lewis Hamilton was called into the pits by his team. But despite entering the pit lane and crossing that pit entry white line, he made the decision to abandon that pit entry and rejoin the track across the grass. Now that led to an outcry from fans who saw that move as a breach of the rules, and well after the race had finished, the stewards took the decision to investigate the incident. However, no time penalty was given and Hamilton was handed a reprimand instead. Explaining the reasons behind the decision not to issue a bigger penalty, the stewards stated that they took into account a number of mitigating factors, and these were that the driver and the team candidly admitted the mistake and the fact that there was confusion within the team as to whether to stay out or to enter the pits, and that led to the infringement. The fact that the infringement took place during the safety car period, and at no time was there any danger to any other competitor, and the change in direction was executed in a safe way. There were also questions asked as to why it took so long for the stewards to begin investigating the incident after the race. I think it was something like an hour. But race director Charlie Whiting explained why, stating, "It just takes a little bit of time to make sure that, if you're going to call a team, you have good reason for calling them. We wanted to wait until after the race to take a look at it because we were getting quite close to the end of it. Then there was all the rain and thunderstorms and everything like that. By the time everything had calmed down, we needed to have a look at it and the stewards decided they should discuss it with the team." Whiting did also confirm that, contrary to some rumours, Ferrari did not protest post-race. It was also put to the race director that Kimi Raikkonen received a 5-second time penalty for a similar incident in Baku where he crossed that pit entry white line back in 2016. But Whiting explained that there is no set or clear penalty for the infringement, and looking at it and reading everything around it today, it appears as though these incidents are looked at differently depending on the track and the circumstances. But to his earlier point, Charlie Whiting added, "I don't think there is a specific precedent. Kimi Raikkonen a couple of years ago in Baku got a 5-second penalty, but that was quite a lot different in that particular scenario. As you can probably expect, this has divided fans massively, but for me, I kind of feel like a reprimand is about right, but strangely, had Hamilton received a 5-second penalty, I probably wouldn't argue against that either. I can see the reasoning of the stewards on this one, but also understand that there should be a level of consistency, and so I totally get why so many are unhappy that Raikkonen received a penalty for a similar infringement, but Hamilton didn't in Germany. What I will say though, and we kind of said this yesterday in the race debrief, is that the FIA have got to sit down and set a clear penalty for this sort of rule infringement. And it kind of goes back to that video I did a few weeks ago on FIA penalty inconsistencies. When you have a rule that can be interpreted differently at different tracks, it's always going to breed that inconsistency. And that is both confusing and frustrating for fans. So setting a rule like, I don't know, if a driver crosses the white line on pit entry, they will receive X penalty, regardless of circuit or circumstance, would make sense and would certainly help towards delivering consistent decisions. Of course, though, they are just my views on all of that, but what are yours? Do you agree with the steward's decision? Do you believe Hamilton should have been given a bigger penalty? And do you think that there needs to be a set penalty for this type of incident? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. One of the other big stories from the race was Sebastian Vettel's retirement. The German was leading the race, was pretty much in control and looked set to take victory. However, with the rain beginning to fall and the track becoming very slippery, Vettel, on the slick tyres still of course, locked up his front and rear tyres and slid off the track into the wall. Although up to the point where he crashed, Lewis Hamilton was catching Vettel, so maybe a little bit of pressure there. But to be honest, and in my opinion, it does look as though he was just caught out by those slippery conditions. He was understandably very upset and sounded devastated over team radio. A lot of emotion in that radio message. And although a lot of people will take joy from that, as many did on Saturday after Lewis Hamilton's outpouring of emotion, it just goes to show the pressure these guys are under, how much pressure they put on themselves, and just how much this World Championship fight really does mean to them. After the race, Vettel took full responsibility for the incident, understandably of course, and explained what had happened from his point of view. The German stated, "I made a small mistake which had a huge impact on the result. I braked just a tiny bit too late for the corner, locked the front tyres and then the rear ones so that I couldn't turn the car anymore. It was my mistake, so apologies to the team. They did everything right. I don't think it was a huge mistake. It was a huge impact on the race because we retired there, but it's not like tonight I'll have difficulty falling asleep because of what I've done wrong. I think it's disappointing because up to that point everything was sweet, but we didn't need the rain." Vettel of course arrived at Hockenheim 8 points clear of Lewis Hamilton in the World Championship, and as we'll see a little bit later in the video, now finds himself 17 points adrift. However, this title fight is far from over and will inevitably flip multiple times between now and Abu Dhabi. And given what we've seen this weekend, it also looks as though Ferrari now have the best overall package on the grid and are probably the team to beat, so there is still plenty of time for the German and the Scuderia to turn it around. Very quickly, there was also some controversy and fan frustration over team orders issued by both Mercedes and Ferrari at Hockenheim. After the safety car came in, there was a great little scrap between Hamilton and Bottas for the lead, but the team did put an end to it by asking Bottas to hold position. And earlier in the race, Ferrari asked Kimi to move aside and allow Sebastian Vettel through to take the lead, with the team stating over team radio that the two were on different strategies, and Vettel was also complaining that he was losing time behind his teammate. I'm not going to say too much on this as we covered it in yesterday's race debrief, but I will say that, although not a fan of team orders, and I never really have been, F1 is a team sport as well, and had Hamilton and Bottas, for example, taken each other out, there would have been just as big an uproar from people, similar to that we saw in Baku with the Red Bull incident. You know, the team were heavily criticised for not calling off the fight between Ricciardo and Verstappen, and so from Mercedes' point of view, protecting those 43 points made sense. As for Ferrari, Vettel was losing time behind Raikkonen, who was being caught by Bottas and Hamilton behind, and the two were on different strategies, and there was also a big difference in how long each of them had been on their tyres. Yeah, if Seb is quicker than Kimi, you could argue that he should just get on with it and pass him, but given how difficult it is to follow and overtake cars of a similar performance these days, the call from Ferrari to swap the drivers makes total sense. Again though, I'm not a fan of team orders, but we must remember that the prize money is handed out for Constructors' Championship position, and as I've already said, this is a team sport as well, and so teams understandably should be able to protect their own interest. Again though, do let me know in the comments section what your thoughts are on the team orders in Germany. As you saw in the race result, it was another miserable day and indeed weekend for Daniel Ricciardo. Despite taking a load of penalties for a raft of power unit component changes, which of course saw the Aussie start in 19th place, he still ended up retiring from the race with yet another engine issue. You can completely understand his and Red Bull's frustration with what is going on at the moment, and you could argue it almost justifies their decision to switch to Honda next season. It's getting a little bit ridiculous. Over team radio, Daniel Ricciardo, who had done well to that point to recover, reported a loss of power and was told to pull over by the team and switch the car off. That was the third time this season that the Aussie was forced to retire due to technical issues, and although at time of recording there has been no word as to whether or not he will need to take another penalty ahead of the Hungarian Grand Prix, I would be very surprised if he doesn't have to, which is going to be even more frustrating for Red Bull, because at the Hungaroring, they are likely to be one of, if not the favourites, for the win on Sunday. Lewis Hamilton won the vote for the official driver of the day, but as I'm sure you all know by now, I like to try and pick one from outside of the top three teams, and this time it's been a real tough one. And in the end, I was torn between two, but I'm going to go with Esteban Ocon. He started well down the order in 15th place and only had one practice session to prepare for the race, because of course Nicholas Latifi took his seat in FP1 and the rain ended any hope of representative running in FP3. Yet despite all of that and a poor qualifying, he still managed to get that Force India up to P8. Yes, of course, as with many drivers in the race, there was an element of luck, but good strategy play from the team and good car control in tricky conditions were also massive factors in the result. Also with his teammate Sergio Perez finishing in 7th place, it was a strong haul of points ahead of what looks set to be a very difficult week for Force India. Now this isn't technically race related, but there are reports this morning claiming that Force India will fall into administration as early as this week, but it is expected that they will be bought out and rescued after that. We don't want to lose Force India from the grid, and F1 certainly can't afford to lose any team at the moment. So fingers crossed this will all get sorted. Back to the race though, and some honourable mentions on performance. We've got to go with Nico Hülkenberg. He was the other driver I was considering for driver of the day. It was a very good drive from the German on home soil and took a very strong 5th place finish. Some big points as well in that fight for 4th in the Constructors' Championship. Really impressed with him this weekend. Once again as well, comfortably outperforming Carlos Sainz. Okay, Sainz got the penalty, but despite that, the Spaniard would only have ended up 10th versus 5th for his teammate. I'm going to give Grosjean a shout as well. Yes, okay, he started 6th and finished 6th, but there was a point in the race where it looked set to be a very disappointing result, but he managed to turn it around in the end. And of course, we've got to mention Marcus Ericsson, who picked up a couple of points for Sauber, and Brendan Hartley, under big pressure this season, deserves a lot of credit for his 10th place finish. Before I go then, let's have a look at the top 10 in the Drivers' Championship and the current Constructors' Championship standings. Lewis Hamilton is now top of that Drivers' Championship with 188 points, 17 clear of Sebastian Vettel, who drops to 2nd. Kimi Raikkonen actually only 40 points off his teammate. He's in 3rd place. Valtteri Bottas moves back up to 4th for Mercedes. Daniel Ricciardo, no points for him this weekend, sits 5th in the championship, just 1 point clear of Max Verstappen. Nico Hülkenberg remains in 7th place, 12 clear of Fernando Alonso in 8th. Kevin Magnussen is just a point further behind in 9th, and Sergio Perez moves into the top 10. In the Constructors' Championship, Mercedes are now top, 8 points clear of Ferrari in 2nd place. Red Bull not a million miles away from Ferrari, but it does look very much as though they're in that no man's land 3rd place again. Not going to get caught by Renault, and probably unlikely to be able to challenge at the top 2. Renault do sit in 4th place, looking very strong there. Force India move up to 5th, but are level on points with Haas in 6th. McLaren no points this weekend, they sit on 48 points in 7th place. As we've already said, Toro Rosso grabbed a point with Brendan Hartley, they have 20 and sit 8th in the championship, with Sauber just a couple of points behind in 9th. And Williams continue to prop up the table, a long way adrift really now, just 4 points on the board in 10th place. That is it for the German Grand Prix review, but what did you think of the race? Did you enjoy it, or did you perhaps find it a little bit dull? And of course, also don't forget to give me your view on the steward's decision regarding Hamilton and where you stand on team orders. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And apologies as well that this video appears to have been dominated by the top 3 teams. I do usually like to include the rest of the grid as much as I can, but to be fair, it was Mercedes, Ferrari and Red Bull where the big talking points came from. I will be back tomorrow with the Hungarian Grand Prix race preview. Of course, that is the last race before the summer break. But in the meantime, you can follow me on social media. Links to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and to Discord are all in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word. And until next time, goodbye.